On April 17, 1863, Colonel Benjamin Grierson rode out of La Grange, Tennessee at the head of 1,700 Union cavalrymen. Which is quietly remarkable, because Grierson despised horses. A childhood kick to the jaw had left him with a scar and a lifelong suspicion of the animals. Ulysses Grant, apparently unmoved by this biographical detail, had just handed him the most audacious cavalry mission of the entire war. Grant needed a conjurer's trick. His army was pinned on the wrong bank of the Mississippi River, staring across muddy water at the fortress city of Vicksburg, high bluffs, cannon batteries, and General Pemberton's 30,000-man garrison. To ferry his troops south and cross the river, Grant needed Confederate eyes pointed somewhere else entirely. So he aimed Grierson like a thrown knife at the heart of Mississippi and told him to make noise. The column rode south through red clay hills and longleaf pine barrens, leaving a trail of cut telegraph wire and smoldering rail ties. When Confederate pickets spotted them crossing the Tallahatchie, Grierson pulled a move that defined the whole raid. He detached his sick men, the so-called quinine brigade, slow horses, tired troopers, and sent them back north as a decoy. The main column dissolved into the tree line and kept going south. Confederate General Pemberton, already stretched thin over hundreds of miles of railroad and river, received a blizzard of contradictory dispatches. Grierson was at Pontotoc. No, Starkville. No, he was driving for the Mobile and Ohio Railroad at Meridian. Infantry brigades marched in 4 directions. Cavalry units crisscrossed one another on country roads, each chasing a rumor the last unit had already disproved. Pemberton was fighting a ghost. April 24, Newton Station, a depot on the Vicksburg and Jackson Railroad. Grierson's troopers wrecked 2 locomotives, 50 rail cars, and a mile of iron track, unhurried, methodical, as though completing an ordinary day's labor. A captured Confederate officer reportedly demanded to know who they were. Pemberton's own cavalry, said the sergeant. Then they saddled up and rode on. By now every Confederate commander in Mississippi had orders to stop them. Grierson's response was to accelerate. The column rode nearly 100 miles in the final 3 days, surviving on foraged corn and whatever passed for resolve at that point in a man. At the Tickfaw River, Confederate cavalry hit their rear guard. Grierson didn't halt, he charged through and kept riding south. May 2. 16 days. 600 miles. Grierson's column clattered into Baton Rouge, Louisiana, gaunt men on spent horses, guidons frayed, boots worn through at the sole. The Confederate search parties were still combing the pine barrens of central Mississippi when Grant crossed the river unopposed and began his march on Vicksburg's unguarded back door. The man who despised horses had given Grant the campaign he needed. Vicksburg fell 63 days later, and with it, the Confederacy's grip on the Mississippi. Strip away the raid itself and 3 things remain: a man who had reason to say no, a general who didn't ask if he would, and a Confederate commander handed too many contradictions to act on any of them. That's not a cavalry story, that's a description of how information asymmetry decides a campaign before the first cannon fires. Grant didn't win at Vicksburg in July. He won it in April, 400 miles away, the moment Pemberton's attention fractured beyond repair. The fortress was already lost. It just didn't know it yet. What we keep coming back to isn't the 600 miles. It's the scar. Grierson had a documented, physical reason to want nothing to do with this mission. Grant either didn't know or didn't care, and Grierson never made it an issue. We think that silence is doing more work in this story than any of the writing, because the entire campaign turned on a man choosing not to mention the thing that frightened him. Which leaves us with something we can't quite resolve. How do you build institutions that find those people on purpose, rather than just stumbling onto them by accident?